are people getting dumber, or is this just, me not understanding how dumb many humans have been throughout human history? But I mean, when you watch this level of people glom on to one single narrative instantly, without questioning, without thinking, without having any information, without understanding anything about what's really going on, and they're incensed, like we've seen this happen over and over and over in a million different contexts lately, in recent decades. But this week, for example, I'm seeing my Instagram stories are full of all of these acquaintances and friends that I know who are incensed about the deportations, the ICE deportations, and posting almost exactly the same things that we saw being posted when Black Lives Matter started. And things like, if you support these ICE raids, then defriend me and block me, and you're a racist and you hate Mexicans and you hate Mexico and don't come here, and so on and so forth. I'm like, guys, look, I'm right here. You know what I mean? But I, I'm like, what do you think is going on, and what is it that you're angry about? Because I mean, this is just my perspective, obviously, but do you want a borderless world? Do you think that America shouldn't have borders? Do you think that anyone who wants to cross the border should be able to come into America? Do you think that if people are here illegally, they should just be allowed to stay no matter what? Does this apply to every country? Does this just apply to America? And why? And are you aware that this is exactly what Trump was elected to do? This is what the American population wants him to do. He works for the American people. So, like it or not, your feelings don't really matter. My feelings don't really matter. I don't love deportations. I'm not thrilled at watching Mexicans being deported. I don't like it on an emotional level, but I understand why it's happening and why it needs to happen. And yeah, it's strange to see, again, everybody instantly glom onto this narrative, and they're not thinking at all. They've been fed something, some kind of propaganda through their social media feeds, through media. And it does make me feel like people are getting stupider.
It's very hard to tell the difference between a bot and a human on social media. I'm not sure that I really can a lot of times. Not because the bots are so sophisticated, just because people tend to act in a kind of robotic fashion in that sphere. So the question then is, was it better in the golden age of the 1990s when the process of thinking about politics, just an issue like immigration, was reliant on television, print media, to some extent, like documentary film, although that wasn't really as powerful of a medium then as it is now. And of course, just in-person conversation. My take on it, my assessment is that those people who were really into politics would be primarily the ones who would be going over. They would subscribe to Mother Jones or National Review. They would read the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. They would, watch PBS or the long form news programs of the mainline channels, and they would be the ones who would, it was kind of a smaller group, but real actually significantly smaller group of people, a smaller proportion of the population who would be thinking this stuff over, and they would be doing most of the arguing, and they would be doing most of the arguing in person, or they would be doing most of the arguing perhaps if they had access to the media in print. And you just had the beginnings of people arguing about these things online in chat rooms and things like that. And I felt like the chat room arguments were much more fruitful. People, it was this virginal state or this pristine state of the human brain in which there was a lot more good faith attempt at actually exchanging views and information and sorting things out. So was it better then? And most people, by and large, people might have talked about politics, but you would have that still, that kind of robotic reactive frame, but it just didn't, in my experience, and certainly people that I talk to all the time of that, my age group and older, it was not, politics wasn't something that was at the forefront of everyone's mind all the time, right? Bill Clinton's bombing Baghdad. Is everybody flipping out about it? Not really. Bill Clinton's getting blowjobs. Is everybody flipping out? Kind of, but not really. I mean, you just kind of took it with a grain of salt. People were, yeah, sure, they were outraged, but it became a joke much faster. What social media did was it connected billions of people. I mean, Facebook is like 3.5 billion people, and all the other platforms too combined. Billions of people connected their brains, their personal identity, their lives to the digital system. And they now have a stake in this system and that digital identity they've created, which, in the last 4 years working for the War Room, I myself have done that. And it's very unsettling. I really don't care for it, but, here I am. Here we are, Megan. Here we are. So, with that process, you're able to engage that many more people. But ultimately, what that means is that you have the most powerful influencers, and I don't mean social media influencers. I mean the people writing their checks and the people whose agendas are being served by these mass influence operations. Basically, they're just riding, hundreds of thousands of human brains around like bumper cars and just smashing them into each other. And, some people, I think, really have become much more politically savvy and much more knowledgeable about the events of the world, especially those who are discerning and able to like weed out disinformation. So that has happened. I see why people are optimistic about technology, because for those people who are discerning and disciplined and have other cultural modes that they're standing on as a foundation, they can use social media in that sense. But most people, in my assessment, it just becomes a kind of brainwashing operation. And and everybody basically has to do it. You're going to run a political campaign where you're not going to engage a bunch of human brains on social media. Yeah, right. It's unthinkable at this point. So yeah, it is always kind of either. It's not always either or. It's sometimes both and. And so there is a certain degree of both and. As to like, are people getting smarter? Are people getting dumber? Yes, many people are getting dumber. And yes, people learn like subtly smarter talking points that they would have otherwise never known about in their like McDonald's job or whatever. But in the end, I think it does it functions as a parasite. And much of that intelligence is weighted either in the machine or in the swarm, in the collective human swarm that is activated online, and not in the individual mind. I honestly think that your average like car mechanic was smarter before social media, because the average car mechanic wasn't always being like blinkered by all of this digital propaganda, and was able to wrap their mind around the situation, whether in their face or politically, with much more ease and naturalness. Just to tie that all up, though, the real question is not necessarily whether or not you can chart collective IQ and quantify it, whether or not you can chart and quantify the intelligence of AI and say, okay, this is where we are. The real question to me is, do we want this? Is this good? Do we like this aesthetically? Is this new kind of quasi robotic world better? Or should we be trying to retrieve something from the past or preserve things that are under threat in order not to succumb to it?